Hi, I'm Jessica Lombard, proud superintendent of Huntley Community School District 158. Welcome back to the April episode of RAIDER Roundtable. In today's episode, we'll dive into the discussion about education funding and the critical role it plays in shaping our schools. We'll explore the challenges, strategies, and innovations behind school funding with our guest, Mark Altmayer, our Chief Financial Officer. Welcome, Mark. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for having me.
Mark, you've been with our school district now for 17 years, but you had an interesting story or interesting journey to joining the school sector. Yeah. Prior to joining Huntley, you were part of the private sector. Sure. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that and how that prepared you for the role you've been in for the last 17 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first day I interviewed, actually, with you.
I think I interviewed you.
This exact same question came up. So I think the corporate sector, I call it corporate, some people call it private, spent almost 19 years in the private sector, 6-7 years in public accounting, which kind of set my foundation of my accounting and kind of finance background. And then for the remaining years, I was really an operational controller for companies such as Enterprise Rent-A-Car, General Electric. And my role as operational controller was really to look at everything, right? To understand every lever of the business, to drive shareholder value, to drive profitability. And I loved it. There was a passion I had for doing that, right? Looking under the hood, so to speak, at everything. And so I would work with the sales department. I would work with the pricing department. I would work with every department of the organization to help drive that profitability. And then I landed in education, right? Made a change because I wanted to make a change for the better. So that's my background.
And talk to us a little bit about, that was a background that you did in corporate world that prepared you to kind of step in. What does your job or your role look like in education today?
Oh, well, it's very different. I will tell you that when I landed in education, right, I went from a $4 billion organization of General Electric to, at the time, a $80 million budget. And I thought it was going to be easy. Oh, no. It was not easy. Education in general is big business, right? And I've mentioned that to the community. Big business, in that I will tell you it is 10 times as complicated as that one $4 billion division of General Electric. And it's complicated because in our roles, and in my role as kind of the CFO, right, I oversee a lot of the operations, whether it's technology, whether it's operations and maintenance, right? At General Electric, we had three floors of a building downtown Chicago. Well, we got 9 buildings. We got miles of roads. We serve over 1 million meals a year to our kiddos. We drive our kids to and from school every day. There's just so much complexity with what we do, and that's kind of what I like about it. But when I landed here, I didn't realize how complex it was. But I quickly learned that what I really love about education is what we do, right? And having a passion for our little guys, our little kiddos, right? And working with people that have that passion, right? I've been here for 17 years because of the people I work with, right? You interviewed me day one. You have that passion because when you're in corporate, it's hard to have a passion for, well, fleet leasing or financial services or banking or whatever widget you might be selling. But in education, we are truly making a difference. And so that drives everything I do.
I think one of the things, too, so you talk about that passion and you have to have that. And it was a learning curve, but it's something that you've done very, very well over the last 17 years that you've been here because of keeping that eye on the prize, if you will, the impact that it has on our students and on our staff that impact our students. But we have a strategic plan, and that strategic plan kind of sets the vision and the direction for the district and where we're going. And there's always goals, if you will, performance indicators that have to do with finance, because the way that we're able to do the things that we do are because of the resources and the funding that we are able to have. one of our goals is to remain sustainable to meet the needs of our students and our community. And so in your role of CFO, and again, you work with so many directors and staff members in different departments, how do you keep that goal in mind on a day-to-day basis to impact, again, that bottom line of our student growth and achievement?
Well, frankly, it's easy, right? It's easy because of what we do, right? And I think it took me a few months when I started here to recognize, wow, the importance of, right, the job as a CFO is to protect and maximize the assets, the resources of the district, right, of the organization. And early on, right, when you figure out what education is all about, and it's changing the lives of our kiddos, whether it's 13 years or 15 years, preschool to transitional program, we've got a lot of opportunities to make a difference. So when I landed here, having that operational background, having that background of looking under the hood, right, flipping over every stone to maximize resources, we had a lot of opportunities, right? And
in every department.
right, and I've always said, and we've always said, every dollar we save, every dollar we maximize, is a dollar that we can keep in the classroom, is a dollar that we could push into the classroom with programming. And so it's really easy when you have that passion for what we do is to look under the hood and keep looking under the hood, and work with other departments so that you create a culture of passion. You create a culture of operational efficiency so that everybody realizes that every dollar matters. And it's not just for the kiddos, it's for our community and our parents as well.
I think one of the things each year when you present the official budget, it's something, and I don't believe you did it the first couple years, but it has been just a standing practice of yours to start each of those presentations and that big binder of information with a picture of the kids, and you end it with a picture of the kids. Because again, that's the reason we're here. And that's where we have to make sure that we are making our priorities and decisions. So that's a piece that I really appreciate, not only to keep you and your staff, but all of us, again, focusing on what our purpose is here in education. You've talked a lot about operational efficiency. And it has been in our strategic plan, it's been a practice and a key performance indicator. And we didn't actually have that as an indicator this year because I think it's just become part of our everyday world and our practice. But can you talk a little bit about how you assist in helping all of our departments look at those operational opportunities where we can be more efficient to save dollars that we can actually make sure are going back to our community or our students and staff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really part of creating that culture, right? I think the opportunity we had several years ago when we created that strategic planning KPI, that goal, was to make sure that, well, more than just fiscal is looking at saving money, maximizing revenue, looking under the hood, so to speak. And so we rolled it out department by department. And when you ask somebody the question, do you like to save money? Right? We have spenders and we have savers.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, everybody loves to save money. Even your accounts payable clerk or any position in the district, an admin assistant, a secretary, when they come up to you and say, oh my God, I saved $10,000, or hey, I found this extra revenue source, there's an excitement that people have when that happens. So when I first started meeting with the departments, right, and asking just basic questions, the people who usually knew where the hidden, the opportunities, right, the little opportunities are the people that are doing the work on a daily basis, right? The people that are looking at the invoices, the people that are paying the bills, the people that are entering those bills into the system, they have great ideas. And so when we met with department by department, we created a long list of operational efficiency ideas, department by department, much more than I thought was even possible. Because when you put it out to the masses and you ask people for input, you get some good input.
What were some of those
opportunities? That really
opportunities?
created the culture. Oh, well, a lot of the opportunities, I mean, we were brainstorming in every single department. whether it was technology, we looked at let's audit our telephone bills. As a result of auditing our telephone bills, we have something called a plain old telephone line. They call it a POTS line. And now in the digital age and the internet world of telecommunications, we don't need plain old telephone lines. And just recently, we cut off all those plain old telephone lines, and we're saving anywhere from $24,000 to $30,000 a year. And every department has their own little story. In food services, I love this story. In food services, when we serve a lunch to a child, we give them a little packet, and that packet is in a wrapper, and it has a spork. And everybody knows what a spork is, right? The fork and the spoon. And it comes with a napkin and a straw. And we said, that's really expensive. That's 11 cents. Is there a way that we could change that? And we found this, I say it's a machine, but it's a device for which students have the ability to pull out a fork, pull out a spoon, pull out what they need on a one-to-one basis, and it's only 3 cents. And when you do the math, based on the number of students we have, we're saving almost $30,000 a year on spork kits, right? And we're saving the environment because kids aren't throwing all that excess away, the straw and the napkin and the plastic. So department by department, we have stories after stories after stories of those operational efficiencies, and it's awesome, actually.
And it can be. It sounds so silly, a spork. What can that do? And it does save dollars and all of those,
Right.
but then it's sustainable for our future as well.
Yeah.
So each director, as you said, knows those opportunities or their staff. But some of our biggest operational efficiencies have come out of O&M. Do you want to highlight just a few of those things over the last few years?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it all started with operations and maintenance. It started with energy, right? And energy, we've been able to reduce our energy cost from, this $2.4 million in 2008-9 timeframe to that of almost $700,000 today, right? And a lot of people look at our solar arrays and they're like, oh, it's all the solar. Oh, no, right? We reduced our energy cost from $2.4 million to almost $1 million before we did solar, right? And I think what the goal we had in operations and maintenance was to be Energy Star rated, right? Energy Star rated is when your buildings of like size across the country are in the top 25% of energy efficiency. So we started working with ComEd, working with NICOR, started working with some of our partners, our service associate partners, our vendors, as to how we can save energy. And it takes time. But over the years, we changed out our lighting to LED lighting. We changed our systems so that, when lights, we put in occupancy sensors. So when students aren't in the room, the lights go off. But not only do the lights go off, the airflow to those rooms slows down. And people don't know this, but the number one use of energy is, airflow, right? Your furnace to push the air room to room. So over the years, making those changes and other changes, right? We made a lot of changes. We were able to reduce our energy costs that much. Those are the big ones. And that energy reduction by itself is sustainability, right? So people always ask the question, how did you start your sustainability journey? We didn't even know we were being sustainable. Right. What we were doing was just trying to save money, right? So that we had additional resources to push into the classroom, to pay for Chromebooks, to pay for the one-on-one devices that we wanted to do. We were just looking for resources. And now all of a sudden we're the greenest district in the state because we've done so many other things, from solar and that advanced to propane buses, which now has advanced to the EV, electric vehicle infrastructure that we have, and the electric buses we have.
We often think of innovation in school districts on how we can change things in the classroom, innovative ideas or programs for students and staff. But actually, you've just talked a lot about those innovative ways that were implemented a number of years ago to save dollars, and not necessarily save dollars, but redirect dollars into something that actually is going to impact, once again, our students. But one of the things that you also keep in mind as you're doing this budget is to look for opportunities that we can remain fiscally responsible for our community. And so you've talked here about things that as a district we've done to shift dollars, but there are also things that have had an impact on the community. Do you want to talk a little bit about ways that you've been fiscally responsible or have helped drive some of that?
Everything we do, right, is for the kiddos, right? But obviously it's for the community because we
Absolutely.
serve the community for which we serve. So everything we do is really for the community. But when we have opportunities to go a little further for the community, I think a great example of that is the community solar that we have. Right, we've got a lot of land. Right, we've got 3 different campuses, and on our Reed Road campus, we've got a lot of land that's unbuildable. Right, so if people are wondering, we are building currently. We're working with somebody who owns this. We're allowing them to use our rental property to put in 15 acres, which is about 15 football fields of community solar. And that community solar, we're doing it for 2 reasons. Number one is for the community, because if the community goes out and they register or subscribe to community solar, well, they can get a 10% discount on their ComEd bill.
Right.
And it's as easy as that. It's a guaranteed.
Just being part of our community, working here, living here,
right. And
you
that's
name it.
not just the residents, that's small businesses too, right? So a small business getting a 10% discount on an energy cost is a big deal. But we also did it because there's an opportunity for the district.
Sure.
And renting that space versus the farm lease rental, we're generating an additional $40,000 a year for renting those fields for community solar. And in addition to that, we're going to receive about a $15,000 to $20,000 energy credit, meaning that's another $15,000 to $20,000 of energy savings, an increase in farm rental, if you will. That's going to be able to be used for our kiddos. So it's a win-win really for the community as well as the school district.
If the community members or staff members are interested in partaking in this, what can they do right now?
Well, we have communication out there in our newsletters and things like that. We do actually, I do believe, have it on our website currently. So they can go out there and go through the process of subscribing to community solar. It takes a little work, right, as sometimes those things do. But it's as easy as that, right? I get a lot of questions. Wow, am I really going to save 10%? Yeah, you really are. You really are, because you are now pulling your energy source from that community solar. It all comes out of the grid, right? It's all going to the grid. So nothing else changes. You'll just receive a 10% credit on your ComEd bill.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, it's great.
You've started getting ready for the next budget, and it starts early on. You're working on it all year long, but presenting some of those that information. We're making priorities and decisions early on, but those will shift as we get new information. We've talked about ways that we've been innovative as a district to allocate dollars and determine how we can shift the way that we spend those dollars. But what are some of the challenges that come with putting together a school district budget?
Yeah, well, I think you touched base on the point that I'm working on the budget all year long.
Right.
It really is almost a 9-month process to roll out the budget. The majority of our funding, right, we have really 3 revenue sources. We have local funding, if you will. That's our property taxes. So 65% of our revenue source is from our community, right? So it's really important for us to be fiscally responsible, knowing that, well, they're paying for us. They're paying for us to do the things that we need to do. The other 30% or 30% of our revenue source is from the state. And the state of Illinois, as we've all heard and we all know, is not really in a good financial position, right? And every year we kind of have to cross our fingers a little bit and hope that the state of Illinois sets aside enough funding for education on an annual basis so that we can receive the allotment that we're hoping to receive. And then on the other side, we have federal funding, right? And right now there's a lot of nervousness, right? With everything going on with the Department of Education and whatnot. But we received several $1 million of federal funding. And so every year when we start that budget process, we have to know that some of the revenue we have is variable, right? Property taxes are not variable. We can rely on our community. What we can't always rely on is the state of Illinois. We're learning that maybe we can't rely on the federal revenue that we receive. And then we have the economy, right? Because the economy drives interest earnings. The economy drives new construction, new residents, new home building. And all of those pieces play a part in the overall budget. So we do the best we can internally, right, from an operational efficiency standpoint, on the spend side, to absolutely be the best we could be. But we have to remember, we still have to educate our kids, right? We have to do the best we can. So it's, I don't want to say it's a shell game, but we're constantly moving pieces of the budget so that we're trying to prioritize our kiddos first and those areas within our organization for which we need to push a little more funding, push a little more resources to, right? Maybe core curriculum as an example.
Mark, we've both been here for a long time, and we've seen the financial state, if you will, of the district. We've seen a lot of change from the outside, right, and how that impacts and to stay that course. But with a lot of practices and systems and procedures put in place, have come, to a pretty healthy area here when we talk about our finances. But something that often we may hear from a variety of different stakeholders is our fund balance. What is a fund balance, and why do we need to make sure that we are setting aside a certain percentage? What is that used for?
So a fund balance, in its easiest term, is think of it as your savings account, right? And our savings account, right? We have a policy that we want our savings account at year end, as of one day in time. Our fiscal year end is June 30th, right? And so from an accounting standpoint, the fund balance represents our savings as of that day, June 30th, every year. And our policy is to keep a fund balance of 25%. And our fund balance is set at 25% because as our property taxes, 60, 70% of our funding that comes in 2 times during the year, right? People pay their property taxes in June and September each year. And so we build up our funding source, right? And then over the year, right, we have to pay for teachers. We have to pay for contracts that we have for contract custodial. We have to pay for supplies. We have to pay to keep the district up and running operationally. So we start utilizing those resources over time, and our fund balance, our savings account, dwindles, right? And it's set at 25% because every school district goes through the same challenge. By the time April or May rolls along, right, you need 25% fund balance in your account so that you can make payroll, so that you have the cash and the resources, to make the payments that you need to make, right? And so that's why it's set at 25%. When I first got to the district, we were at 15 or 16%, right? We weren't paying our teachers enough. We needed to find a way to save money. We needed to find a way to maximize resources. So that's what we have been working at over the years. And we're floating a little above 30% right now, but it is really critical over the next several years that we try to maintain that. We don't want to really dip into that because we still need those resources, to pay the bills month after month after month. So really it's a cash flow reason why we have that policy.
I want to make sure we talked a little bit about that, because people will think about that as, why is all that money setting aside over there? There is a reason and a rationale for that, especially when we may be going through times of uncertainty, so that we can, again, carry through our plans and our mission and make sure that we're doing what we need to for kids.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, Mark, we're getting ready. We talked about the strategic plan at the beginning of the conversation here, and we are embarking right now on our strategic plan for 2030, the next 5 years, and actually beyond in that. What's your role as the Chief Financial Officer in kind of that process, and why is it important for you to hear about those goals that are in the academic area, that are in the learning environment area?
Yeah, I love that question. Part of the reason we work on the budget for 9 months is not only the uncertainty of funding, but it's to build a budget that is reflective of our strategic plan. Because a budget is supposed to be an exact, right, strategic direction of how we spend our resources so that we can achieve our strategic plan, so that we could achieve those goals of increasing test scores. We can achieve those goals of maybe putting a few more resources towards literacy, towards math, towards those areas for which we need to. It may be, right, even from a capital project perspective, right? We own 9 buildings. We own roads, miles of roads. We also need to make sure that our kiddos are comfortable in the environment for which, well, they're learning.
Absolutely.
Right. So we need to make sure that our buildings are well maintained. We need to make sure our roads are well maintained. So there's a lot to do and think about. But really, the strategic plan for me helps drive the direction of the budgeting process. And it also helps us, right, internally as cabinet members, right, the folks that are sitting in a room trying to figure out how are we going to utilize these resources to set our priorities.
And I think one of the things you talked about, not only are you doing this month after month, all year long, talking about the budget, we as a group of administrators, whether it be at the cabinet level or the district leadership level, are constantly having those conversations. And sometimes we have to have some very healthy debates or discussions about that, because resources can only go so far. And how do we utilize those things? And I think it's important to have those different perspectives. We've had those healthy debates over the years on that.
Yeah. That's the passion, right? Because we all oversee different things, and we all have passion for what we do and why it's important for our kiddos at the end of the day. But that, to your point, drives great conversation, right? So that's why I've been here 17 years, is because we all have passion for what we do. And it's, at the end of the day, it's for the kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us, talking about a topic that I think is constantly out there. Our budget, our revenue, our expenditures, those are all important things, and we have to have those conversations. But it is such a complicated web. And I thank you, and I thank your department and your staff for constantly reviewing those things and keeping your eye on what's best for our students and our staff. So thank you again for the work that you do and for joining us today.
Well, thanks for bringing me on board 17 years ago. And thanks to the community as well for having us.
And thank you for joining us today. I'd also like to give a special shout out to the Huntley Area Public Library for the utilization of this awesome recording studio. But before signing off, here's another Huntley fun fact. Huntley 158 was one of 11 school districts nationally to receive the U.S. Department of Education's Green Ribbon Sustainability Award in 2023. This award is given to school districts that have made innovation efforts to reduce environmental impact, costs, promote better health, and ensure effective environmental education. Thank you for tuning in to Huntley 158's RAIDER Roundtable, where it's all students, always. Until next time.